Okay, so on example 5, it says the perimeter of a square is 24 inches. What's the length of its diagonal? Okay, so let's draw a square to start. And it says that the perimeter of the square is 24 inches. So what does that mean that each side length is? Well, all the side lengths have to be the same. So we're going to take that 24, divide it by 4, all right, which means that each of those side lengths is 6. Okay, so what do we know about a square? Well, we know that they all have right angles, okay, and I'm going to look at my diagonals here, okay. I also know that these two side lengths are congruent. So you could do this using Pythag if you wanted, but I'm not. I'm going to use, all right, the formulas that we discovered today. So what this means is that this is an isosceles right triangle, all right, which means that it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So what I'm trying to find is my hypotenuse. So if we remember what that formula is, it's the hypotenuse is equal to the square root of 2 times the leg. Okay? So plugging in, I'm trying to find my diagonal, which is x. All right, it's the square root of 2 times my leg, which is 6. Rearranging that, x is equal to 6 times the square root of 2. And that's it. And you could do that using Pythag, like I said before, but sometimes these formulas are going to be a little bit more efficient. Okay? All right, let's try the next one. So it says, what is the length of an altitude of an equilateral triangle? All right, so let's start there. So let's start with an equilateral triangle. Oh, that didn't look very good. All right, let's start off again with an equilateral triangle. And let's draw in our altitude. So remember what's going on with an altitude. It's drawn from the vertex down to the opposite side, all right, so that it's forming a right angle. Okay, so that's our altitude. So it's not going to be a 45, 45, 90 triangle, all right? Let's do a quick reminder, though, of what's going on with all the angles within an equilateral triangle. Well, what we know is that they are all congruent, all right, which means that all of these are 60, right? So if we take a look at just one of these triangles, all right, within that equilateral triangle, this is now a 30, 60, 90 triangle, all right, which means that we can use our hypotenuse formula and our long leg formula. So what this rest of this question is saying is that the sides have lengths of 12 root 2. So this side length right here is 12 root 2. And what it's asking us to find is our altitude, right? So if we take a look here, all right, our altitude is our long leg, okay? Our 12 root 2 is our hypotenuse. And so we have to use that hypotenuse in order to find the long leg, okay? But to do that, we first have to find the short leg, and I'm going to label that y. So that's going to be my short leg, okay? So our hypotenuse formula is hypotenuse is equal to 2 times the short leg, okay? Our hypotenuse is 12 times the square root of 2 is equal to 2 times, I'm going to use y here to represent my short leg, all right, and I'm going to divide by 2. And so I'm going to simplify the 12 and the 2. So I'm going to get 6 root 2 to represent my short leg, okay? But remember what we're trying to find is we're trying to find the length of the altitude, all right, and that is going to be our long leg. So then our long leg is equal to square root of 3 times the short leg, okay? Long leg is what I'm trying to find, is equal to square root of 3 times our short leg, which we just found to be 6 root 2. All right, I can combine my square root of 3 and my square root of 2. I can multiply those together. And so I'm going to get 6 times the square root of 6. And that's for my altitude. And that's my final answer. All right, let's try another one. Let's do one going in the opposite direction. Okay. All right, so it says, what is the length of the side of an equilateral triangle? So let's go ahead and draw our equilateral triangle again. Okay. And then let's draw in our altitude. So it's the same kind of setup here, guys. All right, we have this right angle. We know that the angles within an equilateral triangle are 60 degrees. which means that this angle right here has to be 30 degrees, okay? This time is telling us that the altitude has a length of 21, and what we need to find is the side length of the triangle, all right? So I'm going to label that as X. We're trying to find the side length because we're just focusing, all right, on that triangle right there. So let's label what we have. All right, what we're trying to find is the hypotenuse. We have the long leg, but in order to go from the long leg to the hypotenuse, we need to find our short leg. All right, so let's start with our long leg formula. So we're going to start with long leg is equal to the square root of 3 times the short leg. Okay, and so long leg is 21 is equal to the square root of 3 times the short leg. We're going to divide out the square root of 3. And then we're going to rationalize it. So we're going to get 21 over the square root of 3 multiplied by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. We get 21 square root of 3 over 3, which simplifies into 7 root 3. Okay? So then our short leg is 7 root 3. But that short leg is only measuring this distance. It's not a full length of the equilateral triangle, and that's why we need to find the full hypotenuse here so that it's one of the full lengths of the equilateral triangle. So that our hypotenuse is equal to 2 times the short leg. All right, our hypotenuse then is equal to 2 times, what is it, 7 root 3? And then multiplying the 2 and the 7 together, we get our hypotenuse is equal to 14 root 3. And that's our final answer. All right, last one here says that the length of one diagonal of a square is 18. What's the length of each side? So let's draw our square. All right, let's draw our diagonal. And that has a length of 18. Okay. Remember, our squares are isosceles, all right, which means that it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Okay. And so what I'm going to use then is our hypotenuse is equal to the square root of 2 times the leg, because it's a 45, 45. So that means I'm trying to find either one of these side lengths. Okay. So our hypotenuse is 18 is equal to the square root of 2 times x. Okay. Divide out the square root of 2. And we're going to get 18 over the square root of 2. And then we have to rationalize it. All right, so multiply by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. Multiply straight across, 18 times the square root of 2 over 2, which means that each side length is 9 root 2 as your final answer. Okay? All right, I'm going to pause there, and then I'm going to give you guys the answers, all right, for the review. And then if you have questions, you can obviously ask me during office hours.